friends. Welcome back to your newest obsession, the NeuroSpicy MomPod. I'm your host, Austen Marie, and around here we talk about the messy, magical process of reparenting ourselves while showing up for the next generation of neurodivergent kids. This space is for those of us who grew up undiagnosed, misunderstood, or mislabeled, and are only now realizing that wasn't laziness or drama. That was my nervous system doing its best to survive. Today, we're diving into a topic that so many of us feel but rarely name: the hidden cost of being neurodivergent. Because the truth is, this life comes with invisible expenses that most people never see. Energy debt, emotional labor, financial strain, the costs that pile up when you've spent your whole life trying to adapt to systems that were never built with you in mind. And this episode isn't about self-pity or blame. It's about illumination, about finally seeing the tab the world has been quietly running up on your behalf, and realizing it's okay to stop paying with our health, our joy, and our sense of self. Let's start with something most of us have felt but have rarely had the ability to name. Being neurodivergent is expensive. Not just financially, but energetically and emotionally. There's a hidden invoice attached to every interaction we navigate in a world that isn't built for how we process information, emotions, or connection. Every time we mask, every time we shrink ourselves to fit, every time we spend hours replaying a conversation because we're terrified we said something wrong or came off weird, that's energy we'll never get back. And the most disorienting part, most of us didn't even know we were doing it. We learned early, often before we could put words to it, that in order to stay safe, to be accepted, to be loved, we had to perform normalcy. We had to anticipate what other people wanted before they said it, manage their reactions, smooth over the edges of our intensity or our sensitivities. And for so many neurodivergent girls, this starts alarmingly young. Research now shows that girls and AFAB children are often diagnosed years, sometimes decades, later than boys. Why? Because they are socialized to mask earlier and more effectively. From the time we're toddlers, we're rewarded for being polite, quiet, and accommodating. We're trained to study social cues like our survival depends on it. And neurologically, it kind of does. The female brain develops stronger connectivity between regions responsible for empathy and emotional processing, which means girls often notice others' feelings more acutely. Combine that with culture that ties our worth to harmony and likability, and you get the perfect storm: a nervous system that learns to mask before it ever learns to self-regulate. Meanwhile, boys are often given more permission to externalize, to act out, interrupt, fidget, explode. When they show traits of ADHD or autism, it's seen as behavior to be managed. When girls do it, it's seen as something to be hidden. Psychologically, that creates what researchers call a mirroring loop. We learn to read everyone else's emotions like a second language, while becoming fluent in suppressing our own. We become experts in harmony at the expense of authenticity. And society praises us for it. Teachers call us mature for our age. Employers call us team players. Partners call us selfless. But underneath that praise is quiet depletion. Because every time we mirror instead of express, we're spending energy on emotional translation instead of connection. Fast forward 20 or 30 years and suddenly you realize this isn't just burnout. It's the interest on decades of self-suppression. When I left teaching, it wasn't just career exhaustion. It was the reckoning of realizing how long I'd been over-delivering and under-receiving. I'd been paying an invisible bill with my health and calling it dedication. That's the hidden cost, the slow leak of vitality that happens when you're constantly translating yourself into a language that was never yours. It's the fatigue that doesn't go away after a nap. It's the tension that never fully leaves your shoulders. It's the moment you realized you've built your life around being easy to love instead of being known. And if that hits somewhere deep, that's probably because you've been paying that bill too. Let's talk about energy, not crystals and sage energy, although, hello, I love that too, but literal nervous system currency. If you're neurodivergent, your energy doesn't operate on the same economy as everyone else's. You can sleep 8 hours, eat breakfast, do all the right things, and still wake up in emotional overdraft. Because for us, everything costs more. Every decision, every transition, every social interaction is a microtransaction. A simple grocery run, for a neurotypical person, it's one errand. For us, it's a 20-step sensory and executive function gauntlet. Which store will be the least crowded? What time of day will the lights hurt less? Do I have enough spoons to talk to the cashier, or do I brave the self-checkout? And afterward, there's a decompression phase. Putting things away, recovering from the noise and overstimulation. By the time the groceries are in the pantry, the afternoon is gone and there is no energy left to actually make the dinner. That's the neurodivergent economy, an economy of invisible expenditures that most people never see. Neuroimaging backs this up. ADHD and autistic brains show heightened baseline activity in the limbic system and the default mode network, the circuits that manage attention, emotion, and sensory input. Our brains are literally burning more fuel at rest than neurotypicals do while active. So while we say we're tired, it's not laziness, it's biology. It's our body saying we've been running the emotional power grid for this whole system and nobody's paying the electrical bill. That labor shows up everywhere. At work, we're the ones reading subtext, smoothing tensions, noticing what no one else sees. At home, we're forecasting meltdowns before they happen. We're translating emotional weather reports for everyone we love. In relationships, we're the ones regulating the vibe. That awareness is brilliance, but it's also unpaid labor. And when labor isn't recognized, it turns into depletion. For parents, that depletion looks like trying to co-regulate with your child while your own nervous system is in full body shutdown. For those reparenting themselves, it can look like trying to build safety inside a body that still expects rejection. The culture tells you to push through, hustle harder, girl boss, outperform the exhaustion, as if we haven't been powering through our entire lives. Neurodivergent people are already experts at endurance. So when the crash comes, when your body finally says no, that's not weakness, that's wisdom. Your system is saying, you can't keep paying the energy bill for a world that never budgeted for your needs. And while that realization can feel devastating at first, it's also liberating because awareness is the first deposit back into your account. Healing means writing new financial policies for your energy. No more overdrafting your nervous system to earn approval. No more interest payments on burnout. Rest isn't a luxury. It's your baseline operating cost. The moment you stop outsourcing your worth to how much you can produce, that's when your true energy economy begins to recover. Here's where we zoom out because these hidden costs don't begin or end with us. They are systemic and generational. Most of us inherited blueprints for survival, not blueprints for safety. We learned from families, schools, churches, and workplaces that value comes from compliance, that being good meant being quiet, that showing up emotional made you unstable. If you grew up being punished for your sensitivity or mocked for your curiosity, you learned to internalize this bill. You learned to carry it silently so no one would know how much it was costing you. That's why, as adults, so many of us are now doing the slow, sacred work of reparenting. We're realizing that what looks like coping mechanisms were actually survival codes. And now we're rewriting them, not out of shame, but out of compassion. When my youngest started regressing in daycare, I saw the whole cycle play out again in real time. The provider didn't understand him, so she isolated him in class and called him defiant and said I used his autism as a crutch. That moment shattered me, not just as a mother, but as the child I used to be, the one who was misunderstood, mislabeled, and left to figure it out on my own. That's when it clicked. This isn't just about parenting neurodivergent kids. It's about breaking the generational pattern of misattunement that starts when a child's nervous system says, I need connection, and the world replies, be quieter. The cost of that misattunement is massive. It shows up as adults who apologize for existing, who confuse peace with people-pleasing, who feel safest when they're invisible. And here's the other side of that coin. It can also create adults who need to control everything around them just to feel safe. When a child grows up without consistent attunement, never knowing when love or approval will be withdrawn, some learn to disappear and others learn to dominate. That same nervous system imprint that drives one person to fawn can drive another to perform power. One becomes hyper aware of everyone else's emotions. The other becomes detached from them altogether. Both are survival strategies. Both come from dysregulation. And this is why we see such a rise in narcissistic traits across our culture. Not necessarily the textbook personality disorder, but the learned behavior of self-protection through control. Because when empathy isn't modeled, when children are rewarded for performance over connection, the nervous system adapts by prioritizing power over vulnerability. It's not about bad people. It's about a society that taught entire generations that emotional safety was a limited resource, and we either had to earn it or take it. So on one end, we have the chronic caretakers, the overfunctioners, the peacemakers who lose themselves. And on the other, the overcontrollers, the performers, the ones who build walls of charm and confidence to avoid ever feeling powerless again. Different masks, same wound. Reparenting asks us to see both sides with compassion, not to excuse harm, but to understand that emotional neglect and misattunement doesn't just create the sensitive and self-sacrificing. It also creates the disconnected and domineering. And both need healing, real, embodied, nervous system level healing, if we want a culture that values authenticity over performance. Here's the tricky thing about healing. It has its own price tag. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. You start noticing every moment you self-abandon, every apology that wasn't needed, every time you push through instead of pause. Unlearning costs time, patience, and grief. It requires letting go of identities that once kept us safe, the overachiever, the caretaker, the quiet one, the strong one. But here's what we don't talk about enough. It costs money, too. For those of us raising neurodivergent kids or navigating life as neurodivergent adults, healing and alignment often come with a financial trade-off that the world doesn't factor in. Because the deeper you heal, the less willing you are to sacrifice your peace for a paycheck. You start realizing that your nervous system can't survive the 9-to-5 grind that demands consistent masking. You recognize that your child's regulation and your own depend on flexibility, not rigid schedules. And so you choose presence. You choose jobs that let you attend therapy appointments or take sensory breaks or pick your kids up early when the day's been too much. And you know what that often means? Less money, smaller salaries, limited advancement, fewer benefits. And yet, those choices are evidence of healing. They're proof that you've stopped trying to outrun your nervous system and started designing a life that supports it. Because when you've been through burnout or raised a child who's struggling to regulate, you know that time is the real currency. You can always rebuild finances, but repairing attachment and safety in the nervous system, that's sacred work. And still, we need to name it plainly. There is a financial hit that comes with being neurodivergent. Whether it's the cost of therapy, coaching, evaluations, supplements, sensory tools, special diets, unpaid time off, or simply the limited capacity to work full time, these are very real, measurable expenses. The world doesn't see that or doesn't care. It sees a parent working part-time and assumes a lack of ambition. It sees a neurodivergent adult freelancing or starting over and over again and calls it instability. But what's really happening is survival in a system that doesn't account for the true cost of regulation. You can measure the economy of burnout by salaries and benefits, sure. But you can also measure it by the moments your child feels safe enough to cry in your arms instead of holding it in, by the nights you choose rest instead of another shift, by the way your body no longer vibrates with dread on those Sunday evenings. Those moments don't show up on a paycheck, but they're the return in your investment on healing. So to every parent who has chosen flexibility over status, or to every neurodivergent adult who's learning to design work around wellness instead of depletion, you are not falling behind. You are rewriting the value system. You are proving that presence is prosperity. Now, before we close today, I want to invite you into a quick grounding moment, if it feels okay. Place your hand over your heart or your stomach, wherever you feel that constant hum of responsibility living in your body. Take a slow breath in through your nose and let it out through your mouth like you're exhaling permission. You don't owe the world constant productivity. You don't have to earn safety. And you are not behind for needing gentleness. Just take one more deep breath. And remind your body that healing is not wasted time. It's the slow recalibration of a life that finally fits. Today's small business shout out goes to Chico, Pickle, and Pong. If you're in the Chico area and looking for a fun, family-friendly way to move your body and connect with community, this is your spot. Chico, Pickle, and Pong's grand opening is November 22nd and will be free and open to the public the 22nd and 3rd. There will be a band and food trucks, so make sure to be there on Otterson Drive near the UPS store. Chico Pickle and Pong offers 11 indoor pickleball courts, 2 volleyball courts, and 8 ping pong tables for drop-in play, tournaments, and memberships. This space is all about connection through movement, laughter, and play, building nervous system safety through joy and community. You can follow their journey and updates on Facebook at Chico Pickle and Pong or reach out to mamchico@gmail.com to learn more about memberships and events. Again, that's mamchico@gmail.com. Support local, have fun, and if you go play, tell them the NeuroSpicy MomPod sent you. If you've ever wondered why you're exhausted even when your life looks fine, maybe it's because you've been paying for survival with interest. You're not behind, you're not broken, you're healing, and the healing work is revolutionary. You deserve rest that actually restores you, relationships that don't drain you, and a life that feels safe enough to belong to you. Thank you for being here, for sharing this space, and for helping bring the invisible costs of neurodivergence into the light. If you would like to support this neurodivergent single mama, please go head over to Patreon and subscribe to be a part of our NeuroSpicy community today. Until next time, friends, ta-ta!